Okay, so we talked about the framework process. So in terms of the emerging risk topic, then what I want to cover is what is new. So because there will be some new risks which you may not be aware of, or which were not important in 2024, maybe important in 2025. So we'll talk about those risks, but then majority of these emerging risks are existing risks, but where the trend is changing. So it may the likelihood or the severity of those risks is increasing, so those we also classify as emerging risk topics. So we want to be aware of both when we are managing emerging operational risks. So what I want to start with is I want to start with generative AI because risk related to generative AI is going to be one of the big topics, and I see a lot of risk teams are still behind in terms of fully understanding the risks associated with generative AI. And I've divided it into sort of various segments so we can then look at specific topics. And then the first big strategic or business risk is not adopting generative AI. So this is where, and we expect that generally in any technology adoption cycle, there'll always be 25, 30% of the organizations who'll wait for the rest of the industry to adopt. And that's what we also see in AI in my discussions I've been having with financial services organization, where you just need to recognize that by not adopting generative AI, your business is taking a big strategic or business risk that if you wait for 2 years or 3 years, then it may affect in terms of the competitive disadvantage, innovation, productivity, profitability, and also talent that employees may want to then go and work for organizations which are adopting AI rather than not adopting AI. So those are all the strategic or business risks you need to be aware of. And if there is no corporate strategy or at the corporate level, you say that, okay, we're not going to use generative AI, then there may be departments or individuals within the organization who may start using AI. And that's where there is the risk of shadow AI systems, cropping up within the organization, that could become a potential challenge with if the top-down approach is, we're not going to adopt generative AI, let's wait for another 12 months, or let's wait for another 24 months. Okay, so those are more strategic type risks. Then for organizations who are adopting generative AI, and then I explicitly am using the word generative AI, I am not using AI risk. And there is a very big difference, because the traditional AI we've been talking about for the last 15 years, like machine learning, deep data analysis, that AI is different. We are very familiar with those type of AI risks because they've been around with us for last 10 to 15 years. What is new is generative AI. The generative AI as a technology only came into the public domain 2 years ago. So this is where there are brand new risks we are not aware of. So in your organizations, you also need to be very explicit. And I see regulators are making a lot of mistake that when they publish a guidance on AI risk, they talk about the traditional AI risk, the machine learning, big data analysis type AI risk. They are not focusing on the generative AI risk, because this is the new technology. This comes with a lot of new risks as your organization starts adopting. And one of the big risks I see is incorrect usage. So it's like so many organizations I've seen where they will say, okay, let's give Microsoft Copilot to 200 employees for 3 months, and then we'll see whether they are able to get any benefits of that usage, but they don't provide any training. And if you don't provide any training, then generative AI is like the most powerful technology created by human. You cannot give this technology to your employees without adequate training, because then they may not use the tools correctly, and then you may end up with information security risk, data privacy risk, making poor decisions. That's why I put that at the top of the list, that when you give access to generative AI tools to your employees, give them training, but don't just give them some generic half-an-hour training Microsoft is providing, because that is what we see, that Microsoft gives a half-an-hour course, 1 hour course, and then everybody gets that same course. Generative AI is very specific to the domain. So if HR team is using generative AI, you need to train them on how to use generative AI from an HR perspective. If marketing team is using generative AI, you need to teach them how to use generative AI from a marketing perspective. And same thing applies to the credit risk team, market risk team, operational risk team, compliance team, that everybody needs to learn how to use generative AI in their specific context. So the training has to be tailored on their specific use cases. But most organizations, just do a half-an-hour training and then say, okay, go and use for 3 months, and then of course the results are very poor because employees, are not they don't have the training on how to use the tool, and then you end up with many of these risks which are on the list. So some of these, you're familiar, like information security, data privacy. We keep talking about that all the time in the media, in the news articles. Accuracy and reliability is another big one. So that's the biggest hurdle I see when organizations are adopting generative AI. Generally, out of 10 people, 6 or 7 people are very skeptical that, okay, can it actually give me good quality output? And that's the biggest hurdle, that if you do the right training, you use generative AI in a right way, then we are very confident that AI can provide accurate and reliable outputs. And then as organizations are transitioning from, if you're integrating AI across various systems, because these AI adoption will be major programs which may take 3 to 5 years. So of course, as those systems get embedded with AI capabilities, there is a big operational resilience angle that we need to make sure that during the transition, things don't break and we are able to transition into an AI-enabled system across the organization. I won't go through each of those lists, so let me just highlight sort of the key ones. So I'll go to, let's say, number 12, which is around the AI displacement. So this is where we are going to see over the next 3 to 5 years that a lot of jobs will be replaced by generative AI agents or generative AI tools. And this poses a big risk, both at the organization level, but also at the society level. And we are already starting to see a bits of that in organizations like Klarna, when the CEO came out and said that AI is the doing job of 500 customer support agents. Yeah. So as an organization, that is something, it's not technology related. It's more about people, how we manage the employees and how that affects the culture, that we are going to go through a major shift in the next 3 to 5 years. So that has to be a big priority, both from an organization culture perspective, but also from a resilience perspective. This transition from to AI is managed successfully. And then I've also added the ESG angle there, because recently we've seen a lot of news articles. They're pointing out about the high energy consumption of these AI tools. So there is also then an ESG angle, that if your organization starts adopting AI on a big scale, you may have to then explain how you are managing the ESG related risks associated with your AI usage. And number 14 is regulation. So we are going to see a lot of regulations. We already have the EU AI Act, but every government around the world right now is creating regulations, because the technology moved so fast that a lot of governments and regulators, they were just caught very slowly. And even then, the regulators, I see they're more focusing on just the generic AI risk, that other than one regulator in the US, nobody has given specific guidance on generative AI risks. And that sort of is where a disconnect I see, that most people just talk about AI risk in general, and you cannot talk about AI risk in general. So those are the risks associated with adopting generative AI. And then whether your organization adopts AI or not, the malicious actors are already adopting generative AI. They don't need to wait for any board approval. So you would have already seen increased sophistication of phishing and social engineering attack, that those phishing emails are getting so good quality that is the phishing detection software now are struggling to detect whether this is a phishing email or a genuine email. We're also starting to see more external fraud. So that is a big jump. There was some recent data published from ORX loss events, and external fraud chart of the external fraud related loss events. The line just went up last year. So we've already seen a big shift, and generative AI used by malicious actor is one of the main drivers behind that increase we are seeing. And then, of course, deepfakes, we've talked a lot about. We've still not seen a major event. So that's what we are waiting. I mean, right now, there's only one major event in Hong Kong where somebody transferred 25 million when a deepfake of a CEO was interacting with that person. But that was not in financial services. It was outside financial services. So we're still waiting, okay, for what would be that first major loss event around a deepfake, where somebody creates a video of a CEO or a senior executive of a financial services organization, and then that causes some market disruption or resilience challenges for the organization. And one of the things, a lot of organizations which are starting to adopt AI tools, so Microsoft Teams, Zoom, every online meeting tool is now embedding AI avatars. So at some point this year, you will be able to go into 5 Microsoft Teams meeting at the same time, because you'll be able to create an AI avatar of yourself and then go to multiple meetings and then give advice and collect all the notes. So all that is great from a productivity perspective, but it also then introduces that malicious actors could then plant an AI avatar into that meeting, and they could then get access to confidential information. So it's something to watch out for, because this is all new technology, which is coming out this year. And then we've also seen increased sophistication and scale of cyber attacks, because generative AI just gives cyber criminals a lot more power in terms of increasing both the frequency but also the severity of the attacks. Another thing to watch out for is market manipulation. So using deep fakes, there may be incorrect information published about some organization to manipulate the share prices. So there is an element of AI being used for market manipulation. It's not happened yet, but that is something that is something should be on the radar if your organization could get impacted by sudden volatile changes in the market. And the last one, which is more sort of next 5 to 10 year type risk, so not for 2025, but the technology is evolving so fast, you at least need to keep an eye where the rogue actors, so like North Korea, getting hold of AGI or SGI capabilities. So in this case, SGI is the super general intelligence, and AGI is the artificial general intelligence. And the difference of that is that today, the generative AI capabilities we have today is already better than 50% of the humans. So if you have a team of 10 people, generative AI can already do a better job than 5 of those individuals, 5 of those team members. With AGI, that level goes to about 99%. That AGI will be better than 99% of the humans. And SGI is where it goes beyond human capacity. So it'll be more intelligent than the most intelligent and the smartest person in the world. That is what SGI capability gives. And these are big technologies. I mean, they're just going to change everything in the world when those technologies happen. And if you see the timeline of AGI, we're talking about 2027. It's not very far, and SGI is still further down the road, but AGI on its own could be super, super disruptive. So as operational risk professionals, we want to keep an eye and prepare our organization for that big change and shift which is coming. And then there is the third parties who are adopting generative AI. So we also need to watch out that if we have lots of third parties. So of course, in that case, then all the topics we've discussed in adopting generative AI will apply for the third party perspective. So you'll need to then check with your third parties if they're using AI. How are they managing all those risks topics we've talked about? But then there is a Gen AI secrecy that they may not tell you. So if there is no clause in your contract, they may not tell you that they're using generative AI in whatever technology they're managing on your behalf. You may then end up with a vendor lock-in that if they use a certain AI technology and you want to move to another vendor because their solution is integrated with a particular technology, it may cause vendor lock-in. So you need to start having those conversations on whether your vendors and third parties are adopting generative AI and the direction they're going, does that align with where your organization is going? Because if you're going in different directions, then you need to start having those conversations on whether this is a long-term vendor or a short-term vendor. And then also around the contractual liabilities, if they start using AI to answer to customer service complaints, for example, instead of humans responding to those complaints, then what are the contractual liabilities? Who could be held responsible? And then from a monetary perspective, you also want to keep an eye on the gains, that if they're charging you a certain amount, but now because by using AI, they're able to reduce their cost by 50%, you should also benefit from some of those gains they are making on AI. They can't charge you the same amount they were charging before using AI. So you also need to then have that conversation that, okay, can they reduce the cost of the service they're providing by using AI? So you also get some of those benefits and they're not taking all the gains from the AI in their pocket. So those are some of the topics then, which need to be on the radar from an AI perspective. Then let me switch into another big topic, operational resilience, because now we have this big umbrella where a lot of risk topics we monitor can be categorized or visualized under the operational resilience sort of thinking. And in this case, we've taken the technology internal. So we already see that the IT infrastructure in many large financial services organization is super complex. And with complexity. And complexity means that we don't understand, so we may be making small changes, small upgrades, and things may break down. So we see a lot of instances. We also have a loss event database, and we see many instances like that where like a simple upgrade, like CrowdStrike was a simple upgrade where they were just applying a new patch, and that caused so much havoc both in CrowdStrike but across the different industry. And that's just the reality, right? So we have complex IT infrastructure because that's what business needs. But then with that complexity, we need a different approach of managing those particular risks. And then if your organization still has old legacy systems, so many organizations are in the process of transitioning from legacy to maybe cloud type system. So then you will have the risks associated with that. So these are like 3 to 5 year type journeys. And if your organization is moving to AI enabled tools or AI first tools, then that could also pose operational resilience challenges going forward. And then, of course, you have the shifting remote versus office work debate, because remote is where that could cause the disruption that we're bringing people in, and then after 6 months we decide no, we're allowing working from home, and after 6 months we decide we're coming in. That can pose operational resilience challenges if we don't settle down, and then different organizations are trying different approaches on that topic at the moment. One of the big topics which I was not expecting we'll be talking about in an emerging risk discussion is power outage. But it is true now that US and most Western Western worlds, they just don't have enough power generation happening to meet the AI usage demand. So out of all the major countries, it's only China which is really invested in the amount of power they are generating. And that sort of is a big priority, because if the governments don't invest in more power generation, we could have power outage issues, this year and next year, because you can't just create new power generation like in overnight. These are major projects, but something to watch out for in the coming days. There is a lot of discussion we see in our emerging risk monitoring around that particular topic. And then, of course, shadow IT is always there as a topic. So that's not new, but it should be on the radar from an operational resilience perspective, that we keep an eye on those shadow IT implementations so they don't cause any operational resilience challenges. And then you have the outside the technology external factors. So that's where we have AI-powered cyber attacks. We're starting to see this new trend where the cyber criminals are stealing the data, but they're not using the data because the data may be encrypted. But when advanced decrypt technologies are available in 2 or 3 years' time, that's where they will decrypt the data and start using the data. So we encrypt the data to protect the data, but now they're also going after encrypted data with the hope that in 2 or 3 years' time, they will be able to use the data. So that sort of is a new trend I wanted to highlight. Reduce cost and increase availability of cyber attack software. So again, because of AI, the cost is decreasing. So even there are many amateur technical professionals now who are going into cyber crime, where they are able to launch attack because the software is so low cost and available so widely. We also saw a recent trend around North Korea planting employees in the IT departments of various US organizations, and there was a Department of Justice action taken against that. But that may be happening on a larger scale because, and I think this is one of the reasons why organizations may be going from remote to office work, because with this remote work, we saw that there's a big trend that you just don't know if you're also hiring remotely and you never meet that employee face to face. Then how do you know that this person is a genuine person or an actor from a cyber criminal group or cyber criminal gang? So that sort of is something we have seen, and we may have to keep an eye when you're hiring, that you do enough due diligence to make sure that those are genuine employees you are hiring. API security is another big trend we have seen. So there's a lot of coverage on the API security in the portal. Targeting of the remote working infrastructure. Yeah, so if that continues, that may be a trend. If some organizations, say that, okay, we'll still allow 60% remote working, 40%, then that will continue to be the target for cyber criminals. And cyber wars, between nation states. So we've seen between Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Palestine. Whenever there are physical conflicts, then the cyber conflicts are also part of those conflicts. So if those continue, then that'll continue to be a topic we need to be aware of from an operational resilience perspective. And then there is the quantum computing, where Google recently introduced a new quantum chip, which was able to do a calculation or a processing in 5 minutes, which the fastest computers today would take like 10 septillion years. So this is like 472 million more years than the age of the universe. So that's the nature of speed quantum computing provides. And there is a race right now where every big company is trying to build quantum computing, and every major country is trying to build quantum computing. So the risk is that within the next 3 to 5 years, if there is enough progress in that particular technology, and if rogue actors get hold of that, then that could sort of unleash many significant impacts on various organizations. Okay, so let me then go around the supply chain. So we all know about the concentration risk, and regulators are now starting to focus on that. Supply chain attack, where the cyber criminals are targeting the weakest suppliers to get then access to the main financial services organization, also has continued and will probably continue in 2025. If your organization is doing vendor consolidation initiatives, if you have 1,000 vendors and you're trying to consolidate to 700 vendors, then that also brings operational resilience challenges. So we see many organizations implementing those vendor consolidation challenges still. And vendor delaying AI adoption. So that's where if you are adopting AI and your vendors are not adopting AI, then that could create continuity and resilience challenges. And then, of course, we talked about the fourth party risk a lot as part of the DORA and operational resilience type discussion. But one of the things you'll see being talked about more in 2025 and going forward is reshoring, where there's a lot of outsourcing that has happened in the last 10, 15 years. But now with AI agents, it may be possible to do that same activity in the base country rather than outsourcing it to a foreign country. So if that becomes possible, that you can do the same activity at a much lower cost in the base country rather than outsourcing, then we may see a big reshoring wave, that those processes, those activities may start coming in-house, that AI could then enable those particular activities. So you'll start hearing those words more. And then there is the whole geopolitical aspect of operational resilience. So Michael, talked about that, and it's been a big topic since the Russia-Ukraine conflict started, and now with Trump in power, it's only going to stay in the news because he's going to tweet like 15 times every day, and then cause some geopolitical waves and ripples around the world. But one of the big elements here is the potential assassination of Trump or Elon Musk. That is where the amount of change they are thinking of implementing, that it's going to disrupt the status quo, with a lot of actors in the US and around the world. And Trump has already had 2 assassination attempts, so it's not, I'm not talking about like an impossible thing, but this is sort of one of the risks where it could create civil unrest in the US if this was to happen, or cause major volatility in the markets and in the geopolitical configuration of the world. So just something to watch out for, that it could cause high level of volatility. And then, of course, with Trump, we will see whether he's able to end the Russia-Ukraine war as he promised. And then there is already discussions happening on the Israel-Middle East conflict around the ceasefire. So we'll see whether with Trump these conflicts sort of end, or whether more conflicts get created as a result. But it is going to be a volatile space, watching that geopolitical aspect. And then there is a people aspect where we've seen a lot of articles around the great exhaustion, that since COVID, there is this general sense where employees are mentally stretched, mentally tired. So that can, then cause errors and disruptions to the day-to-day work. And so it's just a big wave, organizations need to watch out for. It's not about technology, but it's about whether our people are, healthy and motivated and not mentally stressed, that they're able to do they're bringing their best selves to the work every day. And we talked about AI displacement, so that's something to watch out for in terms of AI replacing some human roles going forward. And there's also the millennials and Gen Z approach towards work. So this will be the big driver between this working from home and remote debate, whether you're able to convince the Gen Z workforce, and then the number of Gen Z and millennials is only increasing, and they don't want to work from office 5 days a week. So whether this causes any disruption, we have to see from an operational resilience perspective. And then, of course, there is the angle of employee activism with social media. Employees then have a lot more capabilities in terms of backlash. They can do against the organization, or actions they can take against the organization. And of course, there is the cyber talent shortage. We've had that for the last 7 to 8 years. So that'll continue to be a challenge, finding talented cyber risk experts to join organizations to help them manage the ever-growing cyber risk. So that's an ongoing challenge. It's going to continue in 2025. And then the last aspect around operational resilience is the climate and nature, that from an operational resilience perspective, also the frequency and severity of the natural disasters are only increasing every year. And that's going to continue. We are going to see a lot of climate protests. So we've seen that a lot in UK, but it's also happening in many other countries. That's where they can come and disrupt the day-to-day working of the bank branches or head office. And of course, global pandemic, sort of stays on the list because, we are back traveling, and it's like a record year every year for the last 2 or 3 years in terms of air travel. So that just increases the likelihood that if, there was a disease, the speed and the pace at which it could travel, is come back up compared to, when in COVID, it went down. But one of the things to think about now, and this is very real because of the complexity inside the organization, but also complexity outside, is that we need to be ready for the polycrisis world. So you can Google this term and you'll see that this is where we need to be ready for 2 or 3 crises happening at the same time. So when we do our scenario and stress testing, we cannot think about just a cyber attack or just a natural disaster or just a ransomware attack. We need to think of, what if 2 or 3 of these things were to happen at the same time? Do we have the level of operational resilience to sort of continue our operations and recover from those disruptions? So you'll see this new term being used more and more in terms of dealing with multiple crises. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll pause here. There are a few more slides on some of the other topics, but of course, you can go and watch those slides, and if you want to discuss any of those in a little bit more detail, then happy to have a one-to-one discussion on those topics. But I had slides on show here. Yeah, so I had slides on ESG, so you'll see the different topics which should be on your radar. I had slides on external fraud, so what should be on your radar, internal fraud, and misconduct. So those were some of the topics, but at least, I covered sort of AI and operational resilience, and those are the big headlines in the limited time we have. I covered the main ones, but I at least wanted to give you the slides on all the other topics so that you also benefit from that. So then I just want to end before we go into the Q&A. So all of this, like Michael said earlier, is coming from RiskSpotlight portal. So this is where we provide RiskSpotlight portal to allow monitoring of emerging operational risk on a day-to-day basis, because you can't just look at emerging operational risk in January when the World Economic Forum publishes its global risk report. It's not a once a year thing, right? Because some of these risks are changing very dynamically, and then you need to keep an eye on those risks. And that's where Risk Spotlight portal is the content we provide. And there is still no other content offering out there. So while there are a lot of content offerings on loss events, which tell you what has happened, there is no content offering in the market which gives you forward looking, that what are these new risks which are increasing and then should be on my radar, but then also what do I do about those risks? So it's one thing, to tell you about the risk, but then more important is that, okay, what do I now do about these new emerging risks? That is what the focus of the Risk Spotlight portal is to make you aware of those risks, but then also share guidance on what you can do around those risks. And there is a deep dive we publish every month. So in this case, these are the different deep dives we publish on. We take an emerging risk topic and we share those deep dives with our subscribers. So only our subscribers have access to those deep dive. This information is not available anywhere on the internet. And we also provide operational risk loss events. So this is a view of the operational risk loss events, because from an operational resilience perspective, you also want to learn from the mistakes of other organizations and things which are going wrong in other organizations. So we also provide a loss event database, but our primary focus is more emerging risk and forward-looking risk. And then for each operational risk loss event, we then do a detailed analysis on what lessons you can learn. And you see that some of the loss event databases, like if you're part of ORX, because they need to anonymize the data, they don't share that much descriptive information. So you just know that, okay, this event has happened in some organization, but you don't know the causes, you don't know any of the details because of the anonymization restriction. And then it loses the value, because when you learn about a loss event, you want to learn what actually happened, what were the causes, what were the controls which can be improved as a result of that loss event. And then we do that level of analysis on each loss event we capture. Okay. And all of this is then available. If you want to read more, go to riskspotlight.com. You can register for a 2-week free trial and get access to the emerging risk deep dive we did in January, and get access to all the content. And you can see whether this can add value in terms of at least monitoring what is happening in the industry. Yeah, so you need to know what's happening inside your organization. We can help you to monitor what is happening in the industry on ransomware and cyber and natural disaster and ESG type topics, that we can be your eyes and ears in terms of bringing that external intelligence in a structured format, which is then suitable from an operational risk perspective, because a lot of this information is available on Google, but Google doesn't cater to operational risk professionals. So we have to then spend a lot of time organizing that information, documenting that information, which then we don't have time internally. So that's what we do, is that we find that information, organize it from an operational risk management perspective, so that you can then take that information and apply it in your organizational context.